So moving forward, now we are going to have an insightful, knowledgeable and a fruitful panel discussion. I'm telling you this panel is going to be fruitful by the evening. So the topic will be controlling scope 3 carbon emissions in procurements, strategies for effective ESG integration. The moderator for the session will be Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Chief Procurement Officer, Adani Group. So let me give a small brief about our moderator. Mr. Sanjay Gupta has 32 plus years of professional experience in supply chain, including in procurement and stores, excellent knowledge of supply chain management, optimization technologies, capacity planning, and thorough understanding of business processes, SAP system. So with this, he's going to be the moderator for the session. Now let me introduce our panelists. Mr. Tarun, Bhatia, Vice President, Manufacturing Practice, Evalueserve. Mr. Ajay, Sikka, Director, Global Supply Chain, COE, Carrier HVAC. Mr. Rajat, Luthra, Head of Procurement, Philips India Limited. Ms. Shelly, Yadav, Head of Procurement, Air Liquide. Mr. Rishmantra, Basu, Head Services Sourcing, Global Procurement, Wipro. Last but not least, Mr. Vijay, Sati, Head of Procurement, Nokia. So with this, as you can see, the setup is about to be completed. By the time anyone is free to share their thoughts. Is there anyone who has a certain thoughts, I can say, to share? Anyone from the audience that they want to share some piece of information or what they do, any sort of that thing? The room is open for you. Amongst anyone? Anybody? All right. I guess they are more eager to attend the panel discussion. Once it's done, we'll invite all our panelists along with our moderator over the floor. Okay, from here, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, over to you.
So good afternoon, once again. ESG, again, we have destructive the societies, years to years. Now we have something is coming in our mind why ESG is coming and why it is required. Do you know? I have done some calculation. I am a student of IIM Ahmedabad and right now I am pursuing the MBA PGPX in the supply chain. Prior to I did in 2014. Prior to did my PhD from the Harvard. If we are not understand the temperature right now, we are creating trillions of tons emission and CO2 exhaustion in the system. If we are not think, why 203 pp, we are talking about the 20 trillion GDP or 5 trillion GDP, it's just a sapna. You can understand the temperature rising by 1.5 degree if we are not back up in the early rise. And by 2035, our India temperature would be around 54 degree. And how many people are died with the COVID? It is only just 50 lakhs in the world. If we are not back up in the early morning or we are not back up by next generation, our 7.5 crore Indians died with the skin cancer if our temperature get by the 54 degree. Because you understand we have a 90% below than the poverty line and we cannot afford even the high cost of the energy. So I am talking about what scope 3 is. There is a 3 scope everybody know about. One is the direct or some of the semi-direct, and third is the hybrid model of. Sometimes it is depend on our customer or the supplier or so if you are talking about the value chain, you are not here some of the people are responsible for the procurement. I am not talking about the procurement itself. Our customer, where our products is going on. So what we did, a thousand of advantage is there. A thousand of negativity is there. But how do we give the correct pictures to our senior management? That please understand the ESG as like we are talking about the top line and bottom line. It is more important than now the bottom line. Because if you are not survive, there is no mean of the millions of dollars you currency open with the chest. But there is no mean at all if you not enjoy your health, if you not enjoy the social empowerment system. So ESG is not only the quality management, not only the environment management, it is also social environment management. If you are an industry, big corporates are working it, small corporates, they calculate how to be CO2 emission and going on. And they are also thinking on what is going on the nearby, our society left and right, up and down, how our customers are that. I represent one company named Adani Group. I'm a chief procurement officer there. I responsible around 80,000 crore procurement in a year. And can you understand, we have a tie-up with the world-class company to make a net zero by 2030. And I have a blueprint available in my hand. I will assure you by 2029 we have a, so we make it a very long-term relationship, Tata, all the steel manufacturers in India. Or all the power plant, we have around 20,000 megawatt power plant. One side we have a thermal power, we make it a lot of emission with a CO2. Otherwise, we have a world biggest company in the green energy. So right now, I am responsible around 100 million ton of the cement producing. And we are removing a lot of erosion in the CO2 emission in the society. So how do we elaborate it? And how do we give the better product to the society? Either the green steel side or the green cement side. This is sales side. I'm talking the procurement side. I am leveraged with the, I have understanding, I went to the personally with the earth power plant or the chemical manufacturing, who are producing the hybrid, high genetic like HCl, other case, or the gypsum, those are the PPL fertilizer company, or the steel company level, who are producing the slags. We have tied up with the MOUs with them. We take it their entire, their base product, which is generating around, if you have example of Tata Steel, they are now create a generating revenue of 10,000 crore with the waste management. And we take it their entire waste in our system. We produce as a product. Can you understand now the waste management is producing the aggregates. Waste produces producing the chemicals. Waste producing the vitamins, like refineries. So that's the end use. So I have invited my panelists. I have some questionnaires setting the system. All are aware with this system. All are only, in my request, we should pursue the things to our top management, our owners. At least you should not think like a paper. While we are going to toilet, we have rushed around more than 20 or 30 papers without any wastage. Can you understand? One paper make even the cut of the one tree. So how do we eliminate the wastage in our general life? Like now energy cost is very, very high. How we use the energy efficient lighting or the less lighting like in a green energy. We create a buildings like in energy. So there is a massive reduction in the carbon emission. So I'm invited, my team is here. I will set out a question to, the first question to Mr. Sikka. Ajay Sikka is here. Sikka sir, what are the scope carbon emissions and why they are the particularly challenging to the manage in the procurement processes? So it is a basic fundamental question, but I want to like a very elaborate answer from you, and it can be impactful so people can not only just read it, it is a use in a daily day and day out. Thank you, sir.
No, so thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you, everyone. So I think Mr. Gupta answered partially what are the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. But very simply, scope 1 is anything that direct fuel consumption. Let me use simple words. Direct fuel consumption that we are using inside our manufacturing plant. So if we are using, say, diesel to generate electricity inside our manufacturing plant, that is my scope 1 emission. Simple example. Second, scope 2 emission is my semi-direct or semi-indirect, you can call it, consumption that I have for electricity, consumption that I have for steam to generate electricity, to basically use the electricity for my manufacturing. That is my scope 2 emissions. Scope 3 is all the indirect emissions related to all the upstream, downstream activities that we have. And most of my colleagues, many of you are from manufacturing companies. In a manufacturing company, typically, if we are making a revenue of $100, 60 to 80% of that would be going to suppliers for all the stuff that we buy. So everything that we buy from suppliers, everything that we buy in terms of CapEx, all the arrangements for cabs, transportation for the employees that we have, all the waste that is generating. So that is like all a lot on the buy side or the input side. And then even when we are selling this stuff, all the emissions that are generated during that time, and even at the customers, that is all the indirect emissions or the scope 3. For a typical manufacturing company, I think I know I would be repeating the answer, most of you would know this, but this would be roughly 60 to 80% of the total emissions for any manufacturing company would be around at least 60 to 70%. I come from a air conditioning company. In our case, this is actually more than 98%, because we make the air conditioner, but once we install it, once you people install it at your homes, and if the life cycle is 10 years, the electricity that gets used to run that AC, that is the most amount of emissions that cause the most amount of GHG emissions, and that's also counted in scope 3 emissions. So in our case, the value chain does not start or end with procurement or selling the customer. It even ends till the customer is using that stuff. Now that is simply on what the scope 1, 2 and 3 is. Now why this is difficult? I'll take our example only, Carrier. We are working in 50 different manufacturing sites globally. We have a spend of around $13 billion. If we have the components from China go to everywhere, from India go to everywhere, if I have to track the value chain of the products, actually the honest answer is we don't know the full value chain. So we know the tier 1 value chain, but if I have to understand where does that tier 2 components, tier 3 raw materials coming from mines, what does that value chain look like, to be able to understand and calculate our emissions or the overall emissions, I think we typically would struggle, honestly. I think, and that's the honest admission. So we know tier 1 to a lot of extent, but not beyond the tier 1. That's number 1. Number 2, I think second, why this is difficult is also because this is not only supply chain. Typically, if we have to impact the scope 3 emissions, this again is a full value chain impact. And again, I'll take my example only in Carrier. In US, I think we are working on, from an engineering perspective, on something like natural refrigerants, or the compressors, which are intelligent compressors and which we consume less energy. So if anything, so a lot of what we do in procurement starts from the design part. So if the design is right, I think our consumption for the energy would automatically be lower, which would impact the emissions. So it starts from the design part. Then from a procurement part, how can we make stuff better with less emissions, like reusable packaging, or maybe returnable packaging and all that. So that's all that we would do in the procurement. And then if I move forward, once we sell the components to our the equipment to our suppliers, there are emissions. And there are like new business models coming, like even whether I want to install my own air conditioning or can I sell cooling as a service. Like maybe if we sell cooling as a service, a company like Carrier would install the air conditioning equipment. They'll take that equipment back at the end of the life, and the customer just has to pay for the cooling that they are consuming. So then it actually helps in getting the equipment back after its useful life, and it can be reused for all that stuff. So net the impact any impact will have to be a full value chain impact. Only procurement cannot influence this. Although a lot of the people would see procurement because we are responsible for 60 to 80% of this stuff. That to me is the second big part on the value chain is important. And third one is actually I'll say a lot of the awareness. While we'll all hear scope 1, 2 and 3, but very fundamental, how do I calculate? How do I calculate what does the emission for a product look like? I think maybe we had to do it because our end customer asked for it, and we looked at the BOM and bill of materials, and we actually did that calculation. But if we have to do that, I think many of us would know, many of us, I am assuming, may actually need that knowledge on how to calculate that emissions, and then what can we do with that. So I'll just recap 3 things. I think one is the full value chain, just knowing the full tier and value chain. Second is it's a cross-functional deal. It's not only procurement can do something. And third is a lot of the knowledge and education on what does this mean. Okay, so these are the 3 things that are I would say are the big challenges right now that we see.
So thank you, Mr. Ajay. I would
like to add one point over here. Rightly said, until you cannot measure something, you cannot control that. So M4 is the concept which I totally believe in. You should know how to measure it, how to monitor it, manage it, and then mitigate it. So once you know how to do all these 4 M's, then you will be able to control scope 3. It is difficult, I understand, because it is not under your direct control, but it is very much paramount that we need it needs our full attention to get it done. So M4 is the concept that we have to all work in that direction. Thank you.
So can anybody understand how much ozone layer is destructed by this air condition? I'm not challenging it, but now all air condition companies are think how to be very, very effective gas can be produced. They have changed in the technology and now the very efficient gas is available. Also now everybody is requested not to run the AC less than 24-degree temperature. And in fact, they must having a cutting switch less than 24. It can be dangerous sign because you have understand if we are not absorb our body as a high heat, we cannot survive in the future. So at least a star 5 or the superstar like inductant air conditions are here. Those are most efficient. And especially I suggest because a lot of PVC components or the polymer components coming from the air conditioner as a body. India has struggled with the recycle policy from last several years. In fact, even Nitin Gadkari have put a lot of pressure, but in fact it's not succeed because there are a lot of poverty inside and nobody can afford the scrapper policy, though there were a lot of incentive. So similar policy, if you air conditioner units or the other manufacturing, those are very, very emission created companies are created, then the buyback system or remelting system. Like the EV manufacturers, people are here. I just want to clarify, EV is not a green field because EV again charged by the thermal power. So you indirectly reduce the emission. So if your EV charged by the green energy, in Adani Group, while we are making 2,000 EV trucks, which is the biggest capacity in the world, our entire value chain is charged by the green power. And the green power is not floated, it is a floated panels on the seaside because we are one of the biggest post company. So we can integrate an entire value chain with the, like Mr. Sikka say, if you think beyond than the boundaries, if you think beyond than the limit, then solutions and answers always be there. So my questions to Vijay, Sati Saab, specific question is that how can we procurement leaders efficiently engage with and collaborate with the suppliers to reduce the scope 3 carbon emissions? So some of the answers is already there, but you elaborate what is your experience and how a massive community can reduce it.
Yeah, thanks Sanjay and Ajay. I think so good insights on the entire... Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Better? Yeah. So I'm starting off with a question. So how many of us in procurement are ready to forego a supplier, a good supplier who's giving you a product which is at a price which is the best in class, but has very poor ESG practices? So can you raise your hands? How many of you will forego that supplier? Okay. So this is interesting. I see one hand raised. Okay. And I'm sure most of us, will go through that dilemma, okay? Because no matter what you do, ultimately one of our core objectives is to get the right price. So my, I'll keep it very simple. A lot of details are there around the emissions and scope 1 and 2 and 3. Scope 1 and 2, we all are aware that, well within the control of the company. Scope 3 is where the challenge lies, okay. Visibility is something that is lacking, okay. So suppliers, on one side, and the other side we have the downstream where you have your customers. So I'll give you a live example of what happened very, very recently. So you're all aware of the fact that there is a CPCB in India, and that organization is basically the torchbearer of environment in India. And I got involved in one of the negotiations where the CPCB had had some obligations that were supposed to be met by our organization. Okay, these are called metal targets, and we call it the extended producer responsibility. So as an organization, we produce a product called a base transmission station, which is basically the backbone of the entire mobile networks that you see. We were supposed, and these products are very rich in metals, so, even rare metals. So you have even a lot of gold component. So the obligations get highly increased because of this, because the CPCB expects us to recycle a certain portion of those metals. What I realized was that as an organization, we do not have a visibility around what happens to our BTS. It goes to our customer, and post that we do not know what happens. Okay. So on finding out, digging deeper, I found out that it is ultimately sold to the local kabadiyas, and somewhere down the line it will reach some of the recyclers. So we unfortunately could not get a recycler who could who had recycled our BTS. Okay, so we had to fulfill our obligations through recyclers who had recycled some of the IT equipment like laptops and servers and all those things. In discussions, I came to know that had we been able to recycle the BTS directly, we would have got and spent a lot less money. We spent a few crores in buying those credits and fulfilling the obligations that were set by CPCB. So what I'm trying to say is that here is procurement right at the center. On one side you have your suppliers, on the other side you have the customers, and we can play that role of the integrator. Okay. So my advice to all procurement people is, do not take ESG as a tick in the box, which most of us do. Okay. Please try to be the integrator. So I would call it an activist mentality. Okay. If you are an ESG activist, that's the way we should do. And if we do that, you'll realize that there is value. You will be able to, at least give suggestions around, how to optimize the product to the product team, and also, build bridges with the customer. I'm trying to do that after this experience. I'm trying to build bridges with the customer to find out, how, we can collaborate and ensure that my product ultimately lands back into my hands. I could decide to refurbish it, reuse it, okay, and I could decide to recycle it also, okay. But that is something that's going to be a huge plus for an organization like us.
Sati sir, thank you very much. Now I request to Mr. Bhatia, we have a limitation of the time, so I request all of them to take a small pause of. So Mr. Bhatia, can you share the best practice of your company or the case study or your company who has successfully implemented in the ESG criteria to control scope 3?
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. So my name is Tarun Bhatia. I work for a company called as Evalueserve, and let me also start with an anecdote. So my panelist colleague, he mentioned that we need to have a mindset of an activist, right? I would advocate that we continue to have a mindset of capitalist, right? And I'll tell you why. So we came here, right? All of us have assembled here for this conference, right? Most of us have come through a cab or a car, right? Some of you would have also come from flights. You must have stationed outside Delhi. Now let's assume, let me take my case, right? So I came from Gurgaon, right? I took a cab. So the emissions that were there while I took this transportation, would it come to my company because I am representing here Evalueserve and I have come here as a panelist from Evalueserve? Would it be attributed to, let's say, Procurement because they have invited me here and they are organizing this conference? Would it be attributed to the cab service that I used? Right, I would not take names, right? It would invoke some more reactions. Would it be attributed to, let's say, the fuel that we used, right? Maybe coming from Bharat Petroleum or Hindustan Petroleum. Now, this is the, I would not say complexity, right? It is not a rocket science, right? In the world of where an Indian-based Sunita Williams is in space station, I don't think we can say that scope 3 is very complicated to estimate and work upon, right? It's just that when we are able to embark on this journey with the partners could be on both sides, the suppliers as well as the consumers, right? And that's where scope 3 comes in picture. 99% of the companies, right? 100% of the companies, almost every company wants to embark on this journey. But the 99% of the companies do not know how to, first of all, estimate it. I mean, they would have heard about some international regulations, they would have heard about Indian authority, which is still making it voluntary. It is not essential. But most of these companies have understood the importance of it from the stakeholder perspective, from the business perspective, and I'll give you some examples as well. And we are working with some of our, I just met all of the panel members today, but we are working with them in helping them reducing or estimating the scope 3 emissions, at least 2 of the panelists here as well, and we'll talk about it, right? So we have a platform called as Carbon Detect, and this platform enables to reduce the scope 3 emissions, or first of all estimate the scope 3 emissions, and then help any company identify the hotspots of those scope 3 emissions across the supply chain and value chain, and then make those opportunities visible to your businesses and functions in the world where everything is connected, right? Supply chains are connected, tier 1, tier 2 suppliers and tier 3 suppliers are there. And maybe I'll give a very live case example of a chemical company, right? So a chemical company wanted to embark upon a journey where they would want to produce, and let me give an example which touches everyone's human's life, right? Surfactant. So basically we use a cleaning agent to wash our clothes in our household, right? And there are typical chemicals which goes into these cleaning agents, right? So the chemical company wanted to produce a biosurfactant. Now, the world, as Mr. Gupta also gave an example of EVs, right? There are huge debates, whether EV is the more sustainable or not. ICE engines and other companies will give their all school of thoughts as well, right? I would say that the world is embarking upon the innovation, right? And they are embarking on the sustainable innovation. As a procurement leader, everyone wants to bring innovation from outside the world, right? So R&D teams are doing innovation internally, but as in procurement leaders or the CPOs, you want to bring the innovations which are already existing and you just capitalize on those innovations. Do you want to, if there are benefits of that innovation in a sustainable form, and if that increases the cost, right? Someone asked the cost that, is it a cost effective if you would want to embark upon a supplier which is more sustainable? I would say the answer is yes. If you are able to pass that cost, price and the benefit to your end customer and consumer, yes. I'll give you example as well. In 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we have been using packaging, which was largely, let's say, aluminum foil packaging. And today we are using paper-based packaging, right, in our household and so forth. There are many examples, right? Because we have realized the value and the benefit of the better packaging. Most of the consumer goods companies have taken very high targets with respect to the recyclable content, right? Is there enough recyclable content available in the world? Number one, that is the question. Is there enough supply chain or the waste collection ecosystem existing in the world, including APAC, to ensure that consumer goods companies and packaging companies get that recyclable content, right? So all of these questions become very visible if there is a structured journey towards estimating scope 3 emissions and then reducing emissions. So what I would conclude is, I can see Mr. Gupta's nod that maybe we have to keep it time finite, but I'll just make a concluding note is that if you think it is complex or costly, you can reach out to me and we will make it very, very cost effective to you, for you. If you think that, you would want to do it in-house, you can do it in-house, and if you would want to share it from a knowledge perspective that how it can be done, we would also love to share that knowledge with you. Thank you very much. It's not complex, it's easy. Only if you are able to identify the business benefits and pass those business benefits to your partners in form of suppliers, customers, and the stakeholder communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Now, my question is from the Mr. Basu. what is the step is organized to take the efficiently integrated ESG criteria, including the scope 3 emission, into their procurement policies in the practices? I requested some of the questions are very common. So what is the best practices is there? Kindly elaborate this. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. Thanks for the insights, panelists, and a warm welcome and a good afternoon to all of you. So I will answer the question in three segments, right? The first thing which I believe an organization should do is set up a charter with the procurement buyers involved in the ESG framework. They should also have a spend analysis done and identify the baseline, the supplier bases who can help in reduction carbon emissions. And there might be suppliers who are already in system or doing it, or bring in new suppliers who are doing it. But in both the framework, a mentorship program has to be done, whether we bring along the external firms to the mentorship or in-house, because this segment of suppliers needs to understand how they can grow their business towards sustainability and what are the steps to be done so that they achieve that targets. What I've seen in past is that if you target the mid-segment suppliers, they impact much more to influence the organization's target towards sustainability in doing this mentorship program. As we are doing that, is also important to have the cadences, with the regular cadences with the ESG committee of the organization to see the progress and awareness, as most of us is told, awareness within the organization as well as constant training of the team. That's the first segment. The second segment is obviously of the measurable and create a reported and measurable KPIs, because that's a very critical thing, as again some of our panelists told, but it's a little complex at times, but it is very much needed, because most of the organizations today are reporting these numbers to the external world against the sustainability numbers. Creating the supply base which we have created should be also weighted against the industry standard benchmarking report like GIST impact and all. That will really help, because that give the standard towards the industry. That's the second segment. The third segment, which I think is critical to answer this question, is also the strategic sourcing initiatives the procurement team should evolve out. So what type of strategic sourcing, right? So basically, in the past we have seen technical and pricing. This remains a key when we are doing any RFP, RFQ tendering processes, right? But over the period, and in today's world, it's important that weightage and the criteria under sustainability should be provided when we are scoring or evaluating any partners against the tenderings. The second is how the entire supply chain, not only the core supplier, right? The entire suppliers, because we have set of sub-tiers also involved in the entire supply world, how they are evolving and how they're contributing towards it. So that's the measurable. And thirdly, it's difficult.
I'm sorry, Mr. Basu.
Yeah.
Now we have to switch to the another analyst because we have a time signals.
Okay, sorry. I think I'm more or less done. So last was only on tailspin consolidation. So that's all. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, thanks a lot.
The question is, Mr. Luthra, what is the most significant challenge organization facing and controlling scope 3 emissions, and what is the innovation solution are available with address these challenges?
Thanks. Thanks everybody. I would like to thank to Procure Connect to have invited me to discuss on this topic, and the entire esteemed panel. I think most of the people have already covered what is happening today. Now, if you look at the scope 1 and 2, most of the companies have become carbon neutral because that is something which is already under their control. It is the scope 3 which is the most difficult part of it. I think the reasons are very simple, very known to all of us. The first being very complex supply chain. As Mr. Ajay Sikka was saying, we have a very complex supply chain. It will become very difficult to map and monitor. And the second most important is how to monitor, how to evaluate and calculate the data and capture the data, especially on the carbon emissions. And the third is very important is that the suppliers are finding it very difficult to adapt to these emission norms because it requires money and effort. And therein where the corporates like us can do something. We need to adopt them into our sustainability programs. We have to see how we can help them, right? How we can together run some programs. and ensure that, and what is the motivation a supplier has? Let's discuss it. Somebody asked a question whether you are considering emission norms or the ECSG while you are evaluating a supplier, or whether in any of the RFQ or tenders. No, we are not doing that. What is stopping us? Let us value the suppliers who are spending money and resources and who have a comprehensive strategy on the ESG. I think that is, it should become one of the most important attribute for any adjudication criteria while we are evaluating tenders. Yeah, I think this is the motivation they need. One is supporting them and motivating them, financially supporting them and motivating them to adopt to the new norms, adopt to the carbon emission norms and the protocols. So I think unless we don't do that and we do a lip service, we will not be able to reach anywhere. So that is all I have to say. And I think in the last I would say that we have the technology, we have the products which can help us. We have the technologies like AI, blockchain, which can help us to manage our carbon emissions. It's only the will and the effort which is needed. And it has to come from the big organization like ours. And we need to do the hand-holding for our suppliers. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. It is my mistake. The woman power is here and I give the last priority, unfortunately. So my question, Sally, how the important leadership is divine initiative to control scope 3 emissions? And what can the leader do to promote the sustainability procurement practices?
So not at all. I believe we all believe in equality and inclusiveness. So to answer that, first of all, why it is very important, we all know the answer very well. If we want this particular, our planet home to be livable for us, we have to act fast. I believe it's a pill we all have swallowed. Now it's time that we have to act and move forward in that direction. We all know about the temperature rising, about the climate's not behaving as per the norms it should be 15 years back. So it's time that the leadership of every organization takes it on their shoulders to make sure that the complete top to bottom chain is very much conscious about these scope 3 carbon emissions controlling. Why a leader can play a pivotal role over here? Because leader has a full insight of the company from top to bottom. They know what are the areas, which are the functions which can contribute pretty well in getting this scope 3 emission under control by using the sustainable procurement practices, right? And I believe every leader should make it a task for themselves and for their organization that should be in their DNA that they have to control these carbon emissions. They aim for short term as 2030 to go carbon neutral, almost like 70%, and by 2050 they want to go like almost 100%. But I believe it should be in the DNA of the company to make sure that you live and breathe how you can be live by having these emissions into control. You can have in the KPIs, you can reward your vendors, you can do sustainable procurement practices to make sure that once the vendor outperforms, you can provide them incentives. You can also make them pay liquidated charges if they underperform. And similar structure you can do with your customers as well. You have to be the beacon to make sure that you're the flag bearer that we have to be carbon neutral by 2050. So it should go both ways, not just the supplier wise, but also the customer wise. So we have to live by that. Thank you.
So I am fortunate I have attended the World Summit, and now all the world top leaders are very, very strict on the ESG. I personally listen to them. And now CFOs are not forget, now ESG positions are created, and now balance sheet, while it is a rating, the ESG score is a mandatory. So now all the CFO understand, and they must pay for the value or the incentive created to those suppliers are directly or indirectly give the support to the ESG as a nation, as a world, as a universe. So now the government of India also very much open, and they are using now CSR fund for some leverage for the ESG also. Thank you.
And just one thing I would like to add here, it is a practice for all of us. It's an activity that you can do. For next 15 days, try to go paper free. Try how much you can contribute to it, and you'll be able to understand the impact, the kind of usage that you are using of paper. So try to go paper free for next 15 days, and you will understand what you have to do then. Thank you.
So I conclude all the panelists are giving thoughts in a very deeper way. Now the entire fraternity of the supply chain or the auditors, those are listening it here, they must forward our message to the society as an individual of our livelihood, as well as our stakeholder partners or our promoters or our government association. Please understand, if we are there, then society is there. Otherwise, हम नहीं रहेंगे तो कुछ नहीं रहेगा. Thank you from my side. Thank you very much.
Well, I believe that was quite exciting and interesting panel. Everyone, do you agree with that? If you do, please give them a huge round of applause. So now I request Mr. Neeraj, Vice President Head, APAC, Isertis, please join us upon the stage to present a token of appreciation to our moderators along with our panelists. So please join us so that we can present a small token of appreciation on behalf of the entire team, as they have managed time from their schedule and be here with us to share their knowledge, their experiences, and we are happy to have them here. So first we'll go out with obviously our moderator, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Chief Procurement Officer, Adani Group.